Hi, and welcome to our webinar, All Roads Lead to Both CMDB and ITSM. We're glad you're here. My name is Rachel, and it is my privilege to welcome you all to today's presentation. Speaking with us today is ITS's Senior Professional Services Manager, Rob Norris. Rob is an expert in all things ITSM. Thanks so much for speaking with us today. I'd first like to ask, what do you see as the problem companies have regarding ITSM?
Hey, thank you, Rachel. So really what I've noticed is that most companies, not all, but most have just a misperception of what ITSM really is. And they have no concept of what a robust implementation, how it can really benefit the organization. They think of it in very immature or simplistic terms, or they just think of incident, problem, change. And generally, in most companies, each of those professions operates in a silo. So it's really, they're not leveraging the system, or they're operating these processes in a very immature sort of way. So I was thinking about all this because I visit a lot of clients, and that seems to be a very common theme. Now, if you look, I was also thinking about this because if you look at the marketing material for ServiceNow, it always puts the CMDB right there in the middle. It's kind of the hub, right? And then it shows all the interaction, all the workflow between all of the processes. And that's where this whole concept of all roads lead to CMDB and ITSM kind of came to mind, because all the workflow, all the arrows that you see in these diagrams, in these graphs, they all point into and out of both CMDB and ITSM. So if you're operating all of these in silos, then you're really not leveraging the system, and you're really not seeing the ROI of your investment. The CMDB does not exist for itself, and neither do the ITSM processes. And that's important to keep in mind. So what I want to talk about here today is a simple and prescriptive way to leverage the capability of the ServiceNow platform and all the associated ITSM applications to do the following. One, you need to be able to proactively identify and respond to incidents, requests, changes, problems. The point here is this is both a proactive as well as reactive activity. It's interesting, I talk with professionals in the field all the time, and I've had people actually tell me, I think they've just been indoctrinated to think this, that especially incident or problem, that those are reactive by nature. And that's not wrong, but it's only half true. The full truth is that all of these activities, all of these processes are both reactive and proactive. And you really need to leverage the technology at your disposal here to do the proactive part of it. So if you're talking about proactively identifying problems, proactively identifying rogue change requests, or proactively identifying, incidents so that you can act on them before even maybe an end user even knows the issue is occurring or did occur. You just need to think of it in terms of both being proactive and reactive, and there's no way to be proactive unless you break down these silos and you fully leverage all the different tools, right? So that you're identifying problems through doing correct incident management, and you're linking problems or change requests to configuration items in the CMDB. You've really got to think of it in large terms, back up or move upward, look down, see the entire ecosystem and how everything interrelates. Because frankly, if all you're doing is ticket tracking, and that's what a lot of people still think, okay, when they think of incident, problem, change, they think ticket tracking. And that's the old way of thinking, right? You can be doing incident management and just collecting information, but if all you're doing is ticket tracking, you might as well be using sticky notes and writing on napkins, because you're not leveraging that information. You're not using the data points and making the connections with all the other applications. So next, what you want to do is maintain your HAM, SAM, CMDB efforts with proper change management and request management. You probably had a program at your company that was to build out your CMDB or to do software asset management or to do hardware asset management. But I can tell you from experience that unless you're doing proper change management or request management, all your efforts it'll be a CMDB wasteland within 2 weeks unless you're doing proper change management. Your information is going to be unreliable. Your information is going to be out of date, not to mention the tremendous number of hours and efforts that went into cleaning up your system in the first place. So you really, through governance and proper ITSM practices, that'll help you maintain these other systems. And hopefully that sort of illustrates the points that you cannot operate all these different processes in silos. So when you think about what you want to implement or figure out what your priorities are or your roadmap for future growth, you cannot do that in silos. Everybody's got to get together and figure out how. That's where the real maturity comes in, is how all of these different processes, all of these different systems, how they interrelate with one another. So I know that all, it sounds good. It sounds, heavenly. But the other story that I hear with every client is that they're short-staffed and the volume of cases just keeps increasing. So people are having a hard time keeping their head above water and taking the time to think strategically about what they want to do with their entire program.
Yeah, Rob, so how does someone accomplish all this?
Well, there are a few things that you can do, and that's a very good question. First of all, I want to think about, we all know that we should take time to think strategically. And if you really want to be successful in your entire IT program, you've got to take the time, you've got to find or make the time to think strategically and to break down those silos and coordinate across all the different teams. So, but that's easy to say, right? I mean, we all know what we should do in all different aspects of our life. I mean, we should get 8 hours sleep a night. We should get more face time with the boss. We should spend more quality time with family and friends. We should find ways to get faster resolution times on our incidents. You get the point, et cetera, et cetera. There's just not enough hours in the day to do everything we know that we should do. So you have to make that time for thinking strategically. Otherwise, you're just going to be on this hamster wheel of cases and an increasing workload and never enough people. But there are a couple of ways to make this time. The first is to hire internally, but you've got to find a person or people who, oh man, they know the platform, they know the processes, they know all the little nuances and gotchas of an implementation, and they understand the connectedness of all the different processes. They need to have skills of a project manager. They've got to have the knowledge of process management. That's a lot to ask from a hire, right? So the other alternative or opportunity here is to hire consultants, and their job is to know, or they bring in a team that knows all these different disciplines and professions. And again, like I said, the nuances and gotchas that are going to save you dozens of hours of time during an implementation. And consultants can come in, not only can they do the strategic thinking, the road mapping, the help with the prioritization of implementation, but they can also aid in the implementation itself and in the training. Now let's establish a baseline understanding, okay? Number one, that is that ITSM should not be looked at as a ticketing system. I've probably harped on this enough already, but if you're simply using it as a ticketing system, you're not going to see a big return on investment. Second, all these processes, okay, whether they're HAM, SAM, maintaining the CMDB, ITSM processes like incident, problem, change, request, major incident, even knowledge management, understand that they do not operate, at least not efficiently, in silos. They're meant to be, all these processes are meant to be tightly integrated with one another, as well as with numerous other applications on the platform. If you're not integrating the different processes, you're really not taking advantage of the capabilities of the tool. So you're not going to be seeing your return on investment and you're not going to be using it to its full benefit if you're not integrating all these processes. Essentially, you just bought a Ferrari and you're only driving it a few blocks to the grocery store. You can operate in silos, but you're just collecting information. You're just pouring information into the system and not really using it. This I see a lot. I see incident managers, change request managers, problem managers, request managers. What happens is they've got a solid, disciplined team who's recording every interaction with the customer. They're documenting their troubleshooting steps. They're pouring all of this information into the system, but they never use it. And I see a lot of managers, they just produce these simple little reports, right? About how many cases were created or resolved each month. But it's all just numbers and information and data points that are left disconnected. Second, the other thing that we want to understand is that without help and expertise, there's never going to be enough time and resources to plan, to implement all the robust capabilities of the platform. And actually, I shouldn't say all the robust capabilities, because there is a point of diminishing returns, right? At some point, you're going to realize, okay, this is how far we need to go in this maturity process, but we don't really need to go any further than that because, again, diminishing rate of return. This is also where a consultant, we do this professionally, we can help you with the roadmap and we can help you figure out, okay, how far down this maturity road do you want to go? And, what's the roadmap for getting there? But the trick is always, how far do you implement and then when do you stop? If you're familiar with ITIL, it's kind of the same concept there, right? Implement to the degree that it makes sense and then stop. And that answer is different for every single client. In every company, that answer is different. And a consultant can come in and help you figure out, where that point is. Now, consultants can help you figure this out, right? Or even if you hire someone independently, you're probably going to need someone with a 10,000-foot view to help you sort through all this. But the important thing to remember here, and I can't say this enough, is that you're going to have to create that buffer to think about it strategically and really study this. If you're stuck in the old way of thinking where you're looking at case counts and volume increasing and ratio of staff to case volume, you'll be stuck in the old way of thinking, is that your only way out of this is additional headcount. But I'm telling you, I've done that. I did that for years. I could put together compelling arguments on why I needed to hire more people. But the fact of the matter is, that's a game you're never going to win. Okay, you're never going to have the resources. You're never going to have the headcount that you need. So the point here is leverage the tools, leverage the technology, help the technology reduce your caseload, let the technology help you reduce not only volume, but mean time to resolution, things like that.
Rob, so you mentioned like most organizations viewing ITSM as an expense, right? Rather than something to invest in. So how do you invest in this?
Okay, another good one. And this is, again, something that I've got a lot of experience in because I've got a soft spot for support departments. I ran those for many, many years. And I don't know how many times I heard, yes, your department is an expense. So people don't want to spend a lot of money on additional headcount and that sort of thing because it's not seen as a profit center, right? They wanted to hire more salespeople or bigger billing departments or whatever, the departments that were seen as a profit center. So this is a difficult one to combat because companies don't like spending money on income producing activities. So for example, while let's say incident management, it'll never be seen as a profit center, but there are certainly things you can do to save money in the long run. And that's what we'll spell out a little bit more as we talk. All right, so step number one, understand the best practices and the full capabilities of the ServiceNow platform. Easier said than done here, as a lot of these things are, but I understand how and why the processes are interrelated. Know what this tool is, know what this Ferrari is capable of, right? And in my world, I generally kind of think if ServiceNow is the how and ITIL is the why that explains why you do certain things the way you do it. So again, think big picture, right? What is this tool that you have in front of you, and what is it even capable of? Now, you probably saw this. You know, most of the clients that I talked to, like they saw the demos, right? They saw the sales team come in, and they were shown, oh, okay, here's all the capability, here's all the interrelatedness, here's everything you can do on the platform, you know, even the super cool stuff, you know, they show you the CMDB and they show you the cascading effect of a service outage all the way through to who the users are that are affected by this outage and the automated notification that goes out to those users. They saw it at one point. They kind of like, they saw the dream, right? And they looked at it and they were like, that's what I want. I want that right there. Believe me, I've been in that seat. And I'm like, yes, that's what I want to accomplish. That's the dream, right? And so they buy into the dream, but they never fully implement the dream. So first you have to remember, okay, what was that? What was that demo? What did I see in that demo? And, you know, just get a refresher course of what are all the capabilities that this platform can do for me? And then, so that's kind of your starting point, right? You want to just have the big picture view of this is all the stuff that we can do. And then step two, now that you know what you can do, you need to understand what it is you actually want to accomplish. You've got to develop your priorities based on return on investment, based on pet projects of upper management. We could work with you to help you set your priorities, but it's different for everybody, right? And you need to know your KPIs, your milestones, critical success factors. And bear in mind that this is going to require a collaboration with other process owners across the company. And you're going to have to get buy-in from upper management. Oh, and before I forget, let's keep it fun, right? It's going to be a challenge, but surround yourself with people who like the challenge and are excited about the building process. They're excited about the continual improvement and making things better. Rachel, I know you know this. It's not all just about tools and technology, right? It's about the people as well. So step number one, figure out what the system can do for you. Step number two, figure out what you want to do with the system. And then in the final step, this is going to sound very project managery, but implement iteratively, measure your results, and celebrate your successes. That's kind of a common theme across not just IT implementations, but most project management. So here at ITS, we have several offerings to help customers mature their processes, leverage the investment that they've made in their platform. It's a proven framework, and we use it simply because it works. Now, so this isn't a sales pitch, but I'm going to use this framework as a useful way to identify, at least at a high level, all of the ITSM related capabilities on the ServiceNow platform. What we would typically start out with is a maturity assessment. So we go into a client site or just work with them. These COVID days, it's mostly going to be online, but kind of coach them through a maturity assessment And what this is going to do, this will help determine the current state of ITSM, what their maturity level is, and it'll also help identify what your strong points are or your areas of potential growth. And finally, it helps prioritize your activities because, like I said, there is a diminishing point of return for virtually everyone, and you need to identify what that point is. Next, after the maturity assessment, we dive into what we would just term a basic implementation, which generally consists of incident, request, change, and problem management. Now, this is what most organizations think of as ITSM, right? And they never really implement beyond this point. A lot of times what I see is a company who says they're doing ITSM. They've got this nice, robust system at their fingertips, but on their initial implementation of ITSM, they did incident, problem, change, and they never implemented beyond whatever system they were moving from, right? They essentially mirrored the capabilities, they mirrored the activities of their old system, and then somebody said, okay, we're done. And that, oh my gosh, that's, to me, I'm like, again, back to the Ferrari analogy, you're just driving 2 blocks to the grocery store. Come on, let's open this up. Let's make some noise. And so I really want to push here beyond the basic implementation, right? So what the next is what we call an enhanced implementation. It includes everything that I just talked about, plus it also includes major incident management, knowledge management, service portal, and service catalog development. I still find it very intriguing that at a lot of companies that I talk with, both large and small, okay? So large international companies still do not distinguish between incident, major incident, or they oftentimes also, everything is just an incident, right? They don't distinguish incident, major incident from a request. And that seems, that should actually, in my mind, be part of a base implementation, because you really ought to have somebody in upper management saying, look, I need to distinguish a request, or a question from something that's broken. And we know that, an incident is something that's broken. A request could just be a question, or I need some documentation, or whatever the case may be. But if you're not distinguishing between those things, you don't know how much broken stuff you have in your environment from how many questions your support team might be fielding. And the final phase of maturity or of implementation includes items like artificial intelligence, business intelligence, increased automation, implementing on-call, virtual agent, agent workspace, performance analytics, all of these. Boy, we're really getting into some of the really strong capabilities of the platform that you're not going to find anywhere else. And if you're just ticket tracking, you will never realize this. You'll never be able to see this at all. So this is the more advanced implementation, but it's where you're going to see really, really big gains. This is where you're going to see more capability when it comes to things like one of our initial questions. If you can't hire more staff, how do you handle increased volume? Right here is where you're going to do it, because you're going to become more efficient. You're going to see case deflection. You're really going to be building out your full capabilities at this point.
Rob, this is great. So once someone has identified their needs and priorities, what are the benefits that they can expect?
Well, that's a good question, and an important one, simply because, like, if you weren't seeing any benefits, why would you go to all this effort and expense, right? So again, I'm going to break this down into sort of our offerings and what the benefits are from a baseline and enhanced, and then a more mature phase of implementation. So from a baseline implementation, we've all heard of the SPOC, right? The single point of contact. You're really going to be solidifying that within your organization, whether it's a portal, whether it's your service desk, it doesn't matter. We can create it any way. It could be both even, but you have that single point for capturing inquiries, right? And distinguishing those inquiries into incidents, into requests, into change requests, into purchases. That'll be automated. Again, you've got your single point of contact there. It's kind of your starting point. You'll have an improved user experience, especially when customers, they really want one-stop shopping, right? And when I say shopping, it could literally be, requesting a new laptop or a software, but it's one-stop shop for all of their interactions with IT. You're also going to see workflow driven through change management. You're going to see automated approvals. You're going to see live reports, dashboards. All of these things provide transparency and visibility. And you're going to have an accurate record of the work actually being performed. This is another one where, with most of the clients that I've talked to, and in fact, most of the companies that I've worked for, they're not really comfortable stating that the caseload or the number of cases accurately represents the work being done. And I hope that makes sense, Rachel, what I was just saying there. But with our processes, with our tools, we can create a environment where your caseload actually does accurately represent what's going on, right? You'll begin to at least recognize when, say, when a rogue change request goes through, but nobody actually entered it, right? Or if people are doing I see one of two things. Either people are doing a lot of work that goes undocumented, or they're documenting the bejesus out of things, but very little real work is getting done. So this baseline implementation gives you a platform for accurately recording everything and accurately categorizing it by what type of work it is. And then we get to the enhanced implementation. So the benefits you're going to be looking for here is that you can expect strategic operations to reduce, say, like mean time to resolution, and proactively prevent outages. This is huge. This is huge to be able to detect them. This is where we're getting into the more proactive as opposed to reactive activities, is being able to detect incidents or problems before they reduce or affect our services, really. You're also going to see a standard library of shared solutions. This is your knowledge base here. These will be used for self-help in the form of, say, FAQs and case deflection. Also, internal documentation to use so that all of your technicians are not relearning either their troubleshooting steps or the steps they take to do whatever activity they're doing. And this is all, again, we're back to the user-centric interface where the customers are submitting issues. They're tracking their requests. Also, they're tracking their status updates. So this always brings up something else that I ask clients, and that is, they complain about increased case volume and increased demand, but a lot of what a support department, let's say, or this even happens, customers going straight to other technicians asking for status updates. So I would be interested if I walked into a customer's environment to find out how much of their actual caseload, what percent is actually just the end user asking for a status update. And we can eliminate, you'll never eliminate them all, but we can eliminate a lot of those customer inquiries simply by putting it in front of the customer's face. We can do it with notifications. We can do it with with the portal, and we can show them the current status. And, whatever work notes we want to publicize, we can put that right there in front of the customer rather than them having to call in, or they know the sysadmin Joe, right? And so they just call up Joe and go, hey, can you give me a status update on this? So this is a big one. This is, again, we get more into case deflection and working a little bit more proactively. And building out the knowledge base. One other thought on the knowledge base that I see an awful lot. Most organizations do not have a lack of documentation. There's documentation all over the place. The problem is it's all over the place. The problem is it's not searchable. It's in 100 different formats, depending on who authored it. It's on SharePoint drives. It's spread out all over the place, and not everybody has access to all the information that they need. So knowledge management, although it's just sort of thought of as a accessory to ITSM, knowledge management is really where you can make great gains and a lot of efficiency, either through FAQs, exposing it to customers so they can do self-help, making active recommendations to customers on things they might want to look at, as well as internally. That way, all of your internal staff within all of IT is not reinventing the wheel every time they do, or every time they're introduced to a new activity. And finally, the last phase of implementation provides you and your customers rule-driven automation to make assignments and to balance workload. It's an improved experience, not only for customers, but also for the support personnel. It'll remove distractions and virtually eliminates reassignments. Simultaneously, all of these activities promote communication and collaboration. There's that collaboration rule again, or word again, because it's very important that all of these activities and all these departments are not working in silos. So also machine-driven customer interaction for zero-touch resolutions. We've already talked about that a little bit. And then finally, so data snapshots and trending. This is extremely important for resource planning, for executive reporting, and it's the feedback loop into more strategic thinking. Okay, so Rachel, I'm going to bring this back around. I could talk about this stuff all day, but you're probably tired of listening to me. Let's bring this back to the beginning. If your company is like most, you implemented ITSM at a very baseline level, and then that implementation just sort of petered out. Despite what you had seen the dream, it just sort of petered out, simply because you're drowning in just the day-to-day activities. So you need resources to bring that investment into maturity, and you need a strategic approach to help realize the ROI. And that's where we can come in. That's where ITS has years of experience, and that's where we can really help out. So do all roads really lead to CMDB and ITSM? If they don't, I hope by now you know that they should.
Awesome, Rob. Thank you so much for speaking to us today and sharing your personal experience and your expertise as to why all roads lead to both the CMDB and ITSM. And thank you so much for joining. Have a great day.